I really hope that the spirit of giving that we have this time of the year, and I think about the love bucket and what we share on Thursday nights and Sunday morning, I guess hope that it doesn't let up after Christmas. That somehow in the doldrum days of January and February, that giving spirit continues to mark the steps that we take every day. And I think it will. In the gospel lesson for today, Jesus says that I am sending a messenger ahead of me. And then he kind of goes, well, what did you expect? Somebody in soft robes like this? Somebody who lives in a royal palace? I mean, John the Baptist lived in the woods. He ate the bark off the trees. And you would never think that somebody like John the Baptist would be the one that would somehow prepare the way of the coming of the Messiah. So often the messengers of God's Spirit, the ones who exude God's Spirit just in the way they walk every day, those who kind of capture the majesty and simplicity of God's love are the ones that you would least expect. So who are the messengers in your life? In your journey through this world, who are the ones in your path that exude God's Spirit and teach you what it's like to walk in God's shoes? Who are the people in your life that teach you what religion is really all about? And what about you? Do you feel that in what you do every day that somehow you're a messenger? Do you feel like in the way that you walk, in the way that you live, that you make the world a better place for somebody else? Speaking of messengers, I remember coming here back in 1974. Do you sometimes marvel at the passage of time? I don't. We have 45 years gone. I mean, the people that were the older ones when I came here in 1974 who were 40 years old, they're now in their mid-80s. And I look at that, and I'm not sure how it is in your life. I just say, how did time go so fast? I had only been here like 2 weeks, and they had a potluck supper in what is now Charter Hall, which at that time was the church. Back in 74 and 75, we had a concrete floor. We had metal folding chairs. If you dropped a dime in church, it resonated throughout the entire building. Well, after the potluck supper, I guess I was standing by myself by the entrance, which is now the door by the library. And one of the older members comes up to me, and she puts her hand on my shoulder, and she says, Pastor Don, it's going to be okay. All you have to do, Pastor Don, is be yourself. And then she looked at me and said, don't you ever leave. I don't think she was talking about 45 years. Over the years, that lady who pointed at me and says, don't you ever leave, well, I ended up baptizing her great-grandkids. I married her grandchildren. And then the time came when I did her funeral. But I will never forget those words when I was 25 years old and wondered what I got myself into in this concrete floor and metal folding chairs. It's going to be okay. All you have to do is be yourself. I guess that's all part of being human. There's a part of me, and if you know me, that I like things to be the same. I'm not a real fan of change. And there are times when you want life to be the same. But then there are times, especially if you're going through a tough time, when you don't want things to be the same. You want things to change. You want to have the courage to make changes that you know you need to make. And I think of that poem that I read all the time at funerals. Think about this long and hard. Are there some things you'd like to change? Because you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough and consider what's true and real. Slow down. You move too fast. You got to make the moment last. The other day I was sitting on my front porch or a little concrete slab. And it was cold out, and it was dark, and I was just staring at the American flag, which is standing in our front lawn. I peeked through the window and was admiring the bubble lights on our Christmas tree, the bubble lights that absolutely drive Peggy crazy. And it reminded me of Christmas in Mount Greenwood and how much fun it was to be young and naive, to just believe, and I believed that my grandparents were the richest people in the world. Well, later that day, I went to a local funeral home, and they had this really nice, simple candlelight service where they invited people who had their loved ones' funerals there to come and remember those that have gone by this Christmas season. It was simple. It was beautiful. There weren't a whole lot of people there. And I got up to the pulpit, and there on the pulpit was a pack of blackjack gum. I brought it home. I wanted to show you, but blackjack gum, which is truly the worst tasting gum in the history of the world. And even if you like licorice, you chew 3 times, the licorice is gone, all you got is a hunk of gunk in your mouth. Well, one of the retired funeral directors was there who remembered how I used to talk about blackjack gum in some of my funeral sermons. And I looked at him and I said, "You son of a gun." But I was wondering, do you have a trademark? Do you have like a silver bullet that you might leave behind that reminds people that you were there? Whenever my Mount Greenwood grandpa was at my house, he would leave a stick of blackjack gum in crazy places where I might find them the next day. I'd get up for school, go into my sock drawer, and there was a stick of blackjack gum. I'd go down to the kitchen and open my lunch box. I'd open it up, and there was a stick of blackjack gum. One Sunday night, my parents and I came home, and I said, "Hey, Grandpa was here earlier." And they said, "How do you know?" "Because he taped a stick of blackjack gum to the front door." And it just made me feel good. It made me feel loved. It made me feel special. Those little hunks of goodness that he left behind, and I keep thinking to myself, Don, when you go through each day, do you take the time to leave little hunks of goodness around that might make the world a better place for somebody else? So this morning as you come to church, what are you thinking of? Who are you thinking about this morning as you worship? I'm thinking about my grandpa. I sometimes forget about it. It's been so long since he died. I'm thinking about Jen and your girls and Jim's buddies, knowing that life's never going to be the same again. I'm thinking about Michael Hassan, the student from Lewis University. I'm thinking about the Cardenas family, the young couple who lost their home because asbestos was all over the place and they had to tear it down. I'm thinking of Doris Gember, who's usually here in the second or third row, as they said goodbye to her son Robert yesterday. And so this morning I see each one of you, and I see the tree, and I realize there is something that's always the same, and that something is God's love and God's Spirit and God's unconditional commitment to each one of us. But some things always change, and that might be the messenger. The messenger could be a Mount Greenwood grandpa. The messenger could be John the Baptist. But most importantly, the messenger is each one of you. Amen. If you're able to, please rise for the creed. It's on page 105.